Welcome back to the Contacts Coaching Podcast. We are joined today by Justin Bates, golf coach at Stevenson School. Coach, thanks for being here today.
Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Let's do this. Let's dive in. Coach, take us through your background. How did you get involved in this endeavor that drives us all so crazy, but keeps bringing us back for more? Take us through the journey.
I think it starts first at a small school like Stevenson. As when I was hired to come here and teach, you got to wear a lot of hats. And one of those hats for me happened to be, we need you to coach soccer and we need you to coach golf. And it coincided with me as a brand new teacher and getting thrown into the classroom, but also then getting thrown into this new world of coaching, which I'll be honest, I had zero experience with. So this was almost 20 years ago. I had never coached a team. I'd never had to organize a schedule. I've never had to make cuts. I've never had to really do much of any of that. And so my first experience was coaching the soccer team. I started and coached the JV soccer team. I did that for 2 years. Also, while being an assistant varsity golf coach with the late Bill Hankison, who was a legend here at this school in the basketball world, but he started coaching the varsity golf team the same year that I arrived. So we came into this program together. And so as much as I was an assistant, I was really also doing a lot of the behind the scenes work for Bill at that point in time. And that was a great experience for me because Bill, new to coaching golf as well, needed some hand holding in terms of a little bit of the golfing world. My background, certainly in high school, was as a golfer, was as a competitive golfer. I played here at Stevenson. And while never the best player on the team, I think I navigated all fields of competition pretty well. So I understood what was required of these young golfers. And so for Bill, who was coming out of a basketball background, and me to be his assistant, that really was, I think, a perfect thing. I could manage the boys a little bit. He could handle a lot of the logistics but also add his basketball touch to all things golf, which at times was a little probably more heavy-handed than I think the typical golfer is used to. So that was my entry point. I coached the soccer program here. I coached 2 years of JV. I coached the varsity team for 8 years after that. So I was pretty entrenched into the soccer world. And I'll be honest, that took up most of my mental bandwidth, all while still then getting done with that, being the head coach of the varsity soccer team, and then transitioning into golf. And when I say it's a transition, it really is. It is definitely two different sports, obviously, but two very different approaches in terms of what my mindset had to be going into coaching a golf season. And also really understanding, I think in those early years, that I was approaching it probably the wrong way, trying to bring a lot of my soccer kind of raw fire up mentality into the world of golf, and realizing now, looking back on it, that probably wasn't the best strategy. But coached the golf team with Bill he coached the team for I think 6 years. In that point in time, we won 5 consecutive CCS championships. We won a state championship in 2013. And then Bill stepped down in 2014 and I took over the program full time. It was time for him he had acknowledged it had become a lot, and a group of seniors that he had was graduating, and he basically said, I'll go out with this crew and you can start fresh. Not knowing that what meant starting fresh was literally everyone graduated and me to take on an entire new program. I see it now with these older coaches that are like, yeah, I've reached my limit. I'm like, no, it's because all of your guys are graduating and you want to go out on top. So I appreciated that about Bill. But then that is what threw me into head coaching this golf team. And I'll be honest, as much as I thought that I knew and I thought that I learned as the assistant with Bill, it just took on a far greater element of my time, my commitment. Not from a coaching perspective. And I think that's where golf coach, I use the word, but I don't really feel like a coach like I did like coaching soccer. I feel much more like a general manager in the sense of I'm a program operational guy and part psychologist, part number one fan, a tad bit of skill work, but for the most part, I'm the manager of a organization, of a program, and that's what it feels like. It feels like I'm running a nonprofit of sorts. So that's really been the like kind of my transition into full-time coaching of golf. We've expanded the program. When I started first coaching here, we only carried about 15 kids just in terms of what we felt our bandwidth could be in terms of a varsity and a JV program. I've tried to expand that upwards of about between 22 and 24 kids. That comes with a lot of complexity. It's required to add 2 additional coaches. And I've been lucky enough to also get a handful of amazing young golfers. And that's really been a component of the program that I've tried to build and get our reputation out there, do as much, get our program to play in as many tournaments as we can, get an online presence, social media presence, and just let people know that Stevenson Golf is the real deal. And the more people know about that, the more likelihood that I might get some kid that wants to come and play for me. So that's a nice story of how I ended up here. And this will be my 19th year coaching the golf team.
Wild. I didn't realize that it was because Coach, I guess you retired in 2015 from teaching. It seems like it was yesterday, but I
I
didn't
know.
realize it was 10 years. I want to go in on a couple things because you mentioned early on, right? I got asked to help coach the golf team. And I remember vividly, probably 2001, I'm in Las Vegas at the Nike basketball clinic, and Roy Williams is talking. And I started as a high school basketball coach. And he said, let me give you one piece of advice. You ever get asked to coach the golf team, say yes. And so I coached for 5 years in Sacramento. I coached cross country, then
That's
basketball.
right.
And like you, I brought the boys down here to play against Stevenson. And it was like I was an elite scheduler. And it was like, Coach, what do I do about this? I don't know. Ask your swing coach. I put schedule together, I manage. So it's funny that you said that. And obviously, you got more ability to give instruction than I ever did. But it's very much depending on the talent you have, which we've had. Your role of the X's and O's of me or as a basketball coach or you as a soccer coach is totally sidelined to the other stuff that you're doing. So, what I'm curious about, because you mentioned it, is what did you realize right away, even after those years of being an assistant and then a head soccer coach, and now you're thrust into this golf position? What did you realize right away that you needed to figure out that you thought you had handled, but it was like, nope, you don't?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that I realized is that as a successful program and winning a state championship and having the eyes of the golf world upon us, this was back in 2013, is that whether I wanted it or not, or whether these boys want it or not, or the team wants it or not, we are held under a microscope and we are held to the highest of standards from other teams, from other coaches, from the courses that we go and play at. They are looking at us as, okay, this is the elite team. And so when you're under that microscope, any behavioral issues are magnified, right? It's a huge deal. If someone goes out and doesn't play well and has a bad day, it's a huge deal. And the expectations oftentimes that people put on it, the way in which other coaches are telling possibly their players to keep an eye on the Stevenson guys or looking for any sort of leverage or advantage possibly that could happen out on the golf course. It's a big burden to shoulder for a 15-year-old kid that doesn't know who came before them, that wanted to play on the Stevenson golf team, but now quickly realizes that there's a target on you. And every way in which their interaction goes with a playing person that they're paired with, every interaction with a scoring official, really plays an important role over the perception that people have of the school, of the team, and of me. And I think that was something that I didn't realize when I first took over the program. And now that is issue number one. It is beyond, I don't care how they play. I do care how they play, but secondary to all of that, showing the boys that they are held to the highest standard. I'm going to hold them to the higher standard in terms of behavior, in terms of honesty, in terms of dress, in terms of overall course decorum, because everyone is looking for a slip up when you're been at the top and when you've been really successful. And so starting with that, even when kids come to try out, I say, these are the expectations, even if you're out here for 2 days. And that, I think, has really helped me over the last, I would say, 4 or 5 years in terms of starting with who we're going to be as young men and the way we're going to carry ourselves, the way in which we're going to treat our playing partners with as a great, either a gracious host or a gracious guest, because more than anything, that's all people are going to remember anyway, regardless of what we shoot or how we play. That has been by far the most important shift that I've made over the last 12 years of 13 years of coaching the program.
Yeah. And coaches up there going, God damn it, Bates, I told you, you should have listened.
Bill was great because he would say, my favorite line of Bill was, this was in our second year, and our team actually wasn't that great, our second year that we both took it over. And it was raining, so he called us into his classroom, and he drew up what he thought was a good diagram of the second hole at Spyglass, which is a hole we've been struggling with. It was like he was doing a basketball chalk talk, and it was great. He's hit it here, put it on the green, sink the goddamn putt. You're like, oh, yeah, perfect, great, perfect, thanks, coach. Just like X's and O's that with golf, you could do some of that, but it's definitely not like it was certainly for me coaching soccer or for him with basketball. Really funny.
Oh, so good. We should just tell Coach Hankey some stories. But okay, he asked this because this has been a big shift, obviously, in the last 2 years for us. But even going back to that state championship team in the year before that, where I think for people that are listening and aren't familiar with us, we've had kids go through the program that couldn't crack our starting lineup and then go off to college and be their number one golfer. And now we're in a situation again where we had to add a second JV team, and we're still in a position where we don't have room to take solid high school level golfers. Like, how have you navigated that? What's been the biggest challenge? What creativity have you discovered to try to navigate this in regards to giving as many kids an opportunity to play as possible while still understanding that like we're competing for state championships here. Last year you finished, I think, fourth, right? In the out of 1,600 schools in the state of California. I mean, that's
Yeah,
a
we
different level of
won
expectation.
NorCal's and then struggled a bit at state, but still finished fourth. So it's all good.
All good. So talk a little bit about that challenge and how you've navigated that and how some of maybe your own experience as an athlete, what you learned coaching soccer and navigating rosters and playing time and how you apply those
Yeah.
things across the board.
It definitely is the hardest thing emotionally for me to navigate. And also, I think for the kids coming out for the team that want to be a part of the program to navigate. Most sports at our school, if you want to participate, we're going to come out. We're going to find a spot for you. Maybe basketball, if you've never played before, sorry. But for the most part, we're going to find a spot for you. Golf is one of our school's best programs historically. We've had an amazing program for decades, and I celebrate those that have come before us. But you're absolutely right. I'm faced with a very daunting challenge of many kids. I had 40 boys want to come out for our team this year, and I have to cap it at a specific number. Just we don't have the infrastructure to handle 40 boys. The challenge comes, how do I differentiate? And this is where clarity with the player is unbelievably important. So I want to use, for example, my returning players. So these, let's assume that we're talking about kids that were in our JV program as freshmen. That means they've had one season under me and have got to grow and develop in our JV program, gotten to compete hopefully on multiple occasions. Throughout that time in our JV program, I am telling them every day is a competition. There are no off days for you guys. And this is what it's going to be like. Every day for you is a tryout for next year. And they take this on. They say, okay, this is what I have to do. I have to play well throughout the season. And if I don't, if I end up at the bottom half or near the bottom of our JV list, there's a good chance it might not work out for me. Okay. So, and this messaging is clear and consistent throughout the course of the season. At the end of that season, we have a ladder and we show the kids, here's where you rank on the ladder. The kids that are at the top have generally one thing going for them, and that is that they have the most outside tournament experience. So they have committed to golf beyond our season, and they have made an effort to work on their game with the idea of competing throughout the summer, fall, winter, even spring when we're not playing in matches, tournaments to get more and more competition. So I use those ninth graders that are on the team right now. I say, if you want to be a part of this program moving forward, enjoy this year as a ninth grader, have fun, get to play Spyglass, do all these things, but understand that to get to the next level, which is if we're a developmental program for you guys to get to that next level, to maybe be top half of JV, maybe your junior year to make the bottom part of varsity, it's going to require not just practice, not just play with your friends on the weekends or play with your parents and picking up putts and feeling good. And, oh, I got my handicap here. We don't care about handicaps. We don't care about what you shot with your friends. We are data driven. And so they play in, if whatever tournaments they play in outside of school, I say, send me your results. I don't care if you shot 100, you're showing me that you are trying to compete outside of our season. And whether they play great or not, those kids that send me their scores after each event are the ones that are clearly trying to make an effort to develop to get to the next level. And whatever the next level is, top half of JV, lower varsity. But that's what's required, not just showing up to do 2 days of tryouts where anything can happen. Like just yesterday, our top number one varsity golfer in a 9-hole match was our, fourth or fifth best score. So they can't rely upon just the 2 day of tryouts. It is a year-long focus. Doesn't mean they need to be playing golf every single day, but to have a few key markers throughout the year for them to do a little bit to show that they're developing. The new kids, ninth graders, that are showing up, the ones that don't know me, this is their first experience, I'm going to try to do whatever I can to keep them in the program. So long as they have met a kind of threshold of play, right? So that, and if they can
It's not
cross
like I'm
those
coming in
thresholds,
making it, but if you can play a little bit and you can
if you can
find
play
a
a little
spot.
bit, but if you can play a little bit, then I can get the messaging into you. And the messaging is, okay, you have this year, basically 12 months. Like, congratulations, you made the team. You're a ninth grader. This is a year-long process to then be in the program as a 10th grader. So the sooner I can get that messaging into them in that ninth grade year, the better, the more clear it is, the better they feel about where they are in the process. And then also, I also really try to make the message, the beauty of golf, you don't need to be on a team to play it, to enjoy it, and to reap all the benefits that I think this game can bring to people's lives for their entire life. And I'm trying to be very clear with this message. I say, if you're on this team, it's stressful. Your scores feel like they can make and break how you feel about yourself sometimes. It can be overwhelming. You're playing for someone beyond yourself. It can be an overwhelming experience. If golf for you is not that, if you just love playing, but you like playing with handicaps and some gimmies and playing with your friends and taking some mulligans, go do that. Enjoy the game. You don't need to, if this isn't for you, doesn't mean you can't play golf. Whereas if you can't make a free throw and can't play basketball particularly well, that kind of is it. You can maybe go play some rec basketball somewhere, but golf, you can do it for the rest of your life. You can compete for the rest of your life. They don't need to be in this program to get a lot out of the game. So it's a long-winded answer, but I think about it a lot. So thanks for asking the question.
No, it's a challenge, and it takes me to this next question, which is when you're a soccer coach, or even when you were moonlighting as a cross country coach for a while, or me as a basketball coach, you can have people on the roster that are glue guys that contribute, even though they don't necessarily get on the court in like live game minutes, right? And that's hard in golf, right? So it's you got six roster spots, and you come out as a ninth grader and you get your year, and then it's if you don't perform, you're out of there, in our situation at least. And it's so how do you, I don't want to say replace, but how do you find kind of those glue kids that are super valuable that may not be on course or on field or on court contributors the way you see it in other sports? Because I know that culturally that's still a big part of the togetherness. And you mentioned it to me the other day where you were talking to a kid about, look, you're playing for the team here, not yourself. Like you can't go re-tee. Like you got to take the number and get moving. So talk a little bit about that aspect of being a golf coach compared to your previous existence.
Yeah, there's no ride in the bench, and you are either scheduled to play, so that's six guys, or you're not. And everyone always asks, well, how many guys do you carry on varsity? And I say, the only guys that are on varsity are the six that are playing that day. Because if you're not playing in that six, you're JV, right? But what that allows me to do, though, is that if those six aren't playing, one of those guys isn't playing great, and he's had two matches and he's been the throwout scorer for those two matches, I say, I'm really sorry, but I've got this army of JV kids that have been grinding day in and day because they know that every day is a competition. And I would not be the good general manager if a kid's a throwout score twice, back-to-back days, then the next one, I say next man up, and the next man up is shot
-3 today at Spyglass.
Exactly. So, for example, you and I were texting yesterday. Guy who finished third in the state last year had two bad matches in a row. And he was the throwout scorer yesterday. And before that, he was near the throwout score the match before. And I was getting to that point. I was like, oh man, I got to drop him down. It's going to kill the vibes. But I've got three JV kids that have been outperforming half of our varsity guys. And so I was like, okay, it's our first league match today. I'll let this guy go. And lo and behold, medalist on the day, 3 under par. And he came in, I told you, right? It's going to be there. So it's hard to make those calls. It's hard to make those decisions, especially when you have a senior who's been on varsity for 4 years, right? But any chance I get to try to give some other kid an opportunity, and trust me, all these boys, however 16, 17 of them that are sitting there on JV, they would love that opportunity to squeeze into a varsity match. And that for me is tough to navigate. The only thing I can say is be ready, go out. Every day you go out there and you put up a good score, that is data for me to use and justify when I have to make that decision to cut the glue guy and move him down and bring up hot shot 10th grader who's making it happen. But the boys understand that our objective when you're one of the best programs in the state is that it is the end goal. It is winning those big moments, those big things that for them leave a legacy. And for the boys, it can be sometimes a tough lesson, but there's no just putting a guy on the bench and, oh, maybe he could get some minutes at the end of the game. It's all or nothing. And that's why it's always a big decision that I have to make. I've made some bad decisions. I think back a couple of years ago, I made the wrong decision. I could even say last year I made the wrong decision. But you have to live with those, and try to make the best decision you can with the data you have and the rolling the dice. I'm not a gambler, but sometimes that's what is required when you can't make a sub on the third hole because the guy's made 2 double bogeys in a row.
Yep, no
You just
doubt.
gotta live with your decisions.
Yep. At the end of the day, right? Golf's no different than basketball. Players win, coaches lose. So it happens.
100%. I get no credit when they win, which I don't want anything. I don't deserve it. I just say I just drive the van. But when things aren't going well, or I make the wrong decision on who to play, you hear the chirping.
Yeah, it happens. All right, let me go to this other piece. Golf is unique in that you have to play it a lot, right? It's not where we're unique as a school in our push of multi-sport athletes in this era of sports specialization and the youth sports industrial complex ruining athletics for kids. But you've got 2 kids on your team at least, and possibly 3, right, that played soccer this winter, maybe 4 actually. I'm looking at your roster.
I got of my top 6 playing today,
Yeah.
4 of those 6 were playing winter sports.
Yeah. So talk a little bit about that in regards to how our kids are able to do that. And maybe these kids are aliens and unicorns, who knows? But ultimately, like, how does that factor in relative to what with our opponents, right? Or these other kids that just all they do is golf. Talk a little bit about how that has benefited your guys, your team, your own coaching approach, etc.
I'm the biggest fan of the multi-sport golfer. I truly believe that golf is, and the best golfers are athletes. And it doesn't get a lot of credit as legit sport. Yeah, it's just a game. I get that. But who are the best players on my team? They're the best athletes. Our number 1 golfer took our team to a NorCal championship game last year in soccer. Our number 3 player this year is the soon to be varsity basketball player. 2 other guys playing and football, right? And I think it's so good for them to get out and use their bodies and not just grind away at golf, mostly because I think it helps them put things in perspective. But the other thing is the kids that I see that grind away at golf, I'm all for it. Listen, if some kids, that's their thing and they want to do it and they want to grind away, I think that's great, of course. But if any kid shows any inkling that, oh, I was maybe thinking of playing basketball or playing soccer, it's right before the golf season, do you think I should do it? I always, 100%, I always say yes. You learn how to be a good teammate. You learn how to use your body, and you get a break from golf. You get out of that space of measuring yourself by a number, which sometimes can happen. And whether that number is what their lowest score is, what their scoring average is, it can be a real grind. If I was talking about this the other day when Live Golf, so the Saudi-backed tournament league was created, and I remember people that know golf, but they're not around it quite like I am with kids that are extremely driven. And they say, how could these guys take $100 million and not want to play at the elite level in the PGA anymore? And I said, I 100% get it. Like, these guys have been on a grind since they were 9 years old. And every day it's a number and your name. And it's a measurement of who you are and how you are. And it's exhausting. And for these guys to say, I can take a payday and not have to like worry as much, or just like it's a sigh of relief for them. These kids, they need a break and they need to step away from golf because it can grind kids down. It can wear them out. It's why most kids end up after 2 years in Division I golf, moving on to something else. It just grinds them down. So I'm a big fan of kids doing other sports. And if it might impact their future with golf, but I think in terms of who they're going to be as young men, in terms of the type of people I want to be around, it's definitely something I advocate for. And anytime a kid asks, should I do this? I always say yes, 100%.
No, I love that. And I think the way you articulated the grind, especially in a sport like golf that they're on, and the wear and tear that takes as much as you enjoy it, it's a great way to contextualize that and provide value in taking a break, even if it's not another sport, right? Maybe you're in the theater, who knows, but just taking a breath. And the way you said that, I've never even thought about it that way, that every day of your life, if you're on that grind, you're being judged on a number. And it's
Yep.
even like when I ask the kids, how'd you play today? I say, not very well. Does not very well have a number. I need to stop that because that's just feeding the monster.
Yeah, and that's the biggest difference. That's why a lot of kids don't want to compete outside of the golf season because it's really hard to see your name up on a leaderboard. It's not even on a leaderboard anymore. Now it's all on a computer, right? And it's there to live forever. It's your name and it's a number. And some kids they can handle that and some kids can't. And that's what I'm trying to at least encourage in these outside tournaments is getting used to that and getting, okay, my name is not just a number. I send them encouragement. If they didn't play well, it's okay, it's fine. My role is to be their number one fan first and foremost. And so if they're competing, I'm rooting for them. And if they don't play well, I'm still rooting for them. If they play great, no one is going to be more excited for them than me. Number one fan, whether they want it or not.
What would you say in regards to crossover? Hmm, I don't want to say techniques as much as approaches that you've been able to learn by watching other teams, right? We've got some really successful teams on this campus over the years, right? You've been here almost 20 years, and our water polo program has been hyper successful. Tennis, right? We've had waves of other sports. And as a multi-sport guy, your kids played three, four sports apiece, right? What have you learned watching other teams that you've been able to adopt as a coach? And if not like necessarily drill work or whatever, but just
No.
stuff that transfers.
The most important thing that I learned as a soccer coach, not learned, observed, and tried to implement. The number one thing I see when I see teams practicing well, they are playing in some version or another, right? They're not standing in line. They're not, or if they are, it's just for a minute to catch their breath, but it's play based. And because that's what the sport is, it's playing the sport. When I coach soccer, I hated doing the like stand in line drills and one person's here and they pass it over here and that kid like shoots it. That's not the game. And so we're not going to practice it. With golf, my mentality is the same. We use the driving range to warm up, right? It's to get the body loose and then we go play. Every day of our season, we never have a practice day where we're going like, oh, guys, we're just going to grind on the short game right now. They can do that on their own time. If they're struggling in something and they want to put in some time, they can't get off the tee. Great. That's really what the weekend is for. That's like Friday, Saturday, Sunday. That's independent play and practice time. But if we have an open golf course in front of us, the ultimate test right out here, Spyglass, which is, I think, the front nine, the ultimate test in golf. And we're going to let that sit there. And because guys want to bang balls on the range, that's a failure of me as a coach. Everything is about play. It's about competition. It's about doing the sport that we're here to compete in. So now in soccer, our levels of play were a variety of different things, right? But we're not just playing scrimmages the whole time. We're doing implementations of the things that we're doing in games. And same thing in golf, right? So we might be saying, we're going to play 9 holes. I'm going to pull the flag sticks on every green. No one's going to know where the hole is. So that we're all playing, but how are we going to play it? We're playing good, safe team golf. What's our only aiming point? It's the middle of the green, right? And you don't know where the hole is. So that's how we're going to practice. So it's putting little wrinkles into the sport it is that we're trying to get ready for and to play for that. So that's basically, and when I watch all the teams on campus, I love, love, love our sports teams here. And when I see in their practices, when their kids are not standing around and they're doing stuff, I know that's a great program.
No, and that's a good reminder. I'm just writing down my notes like normal, and it's like teams need to play, not stand in line. I've struggled for years as I've aged in my own career where it's like, I don't even like using the word drill. And when that word gets come, no, what activity are we doing? How are we trying to make this competitive and game like? And I would say we had a great year success wise. And I'm looking at my notes and what you just said, and we didn't play enough. We didn't play enough, and that probably hurt us and cost us a couple of those games. And it's something that we need to recommit to. And I love that. So thanks for sharing that. What would you say is something you've most recently changed your mind on? And it doesn't have to have anything to do with coaching. So if you think about your role as a parent of two, as a spouse, as a history teacher, as a guy with a JD that was going to practice law and pivoted in this climate, coach, with the polarization of and everything, I'm often curious how people are actively working on growth mindset and challenging their own beliefs. So what's something, if you thought about that you've actually decided, hey, I used to be over here and pretty dug in, and now I'm over here, and here's why.
That's such a good question because I think as a teacher, I teach history here at Stevenson, and I think it's real easy to get, I don't want to say stuck in our ways, but confident in our abilities as they are. And I think for me, as my kids are getting older and my kids are about to be in high school here, I've seen my own children grow, and I've always connected really well with the high school age students in general, whether those that I teach or whether I coach. But as my kids have gotten older, I realize they're still just, they might look like adults. They might look like these things that I still feel this kind of close connection. I don't feel that old. I'm in my mid 40s, but I feel like I did when I was 16. It doesn't feel that different. And so I think it's a reminder that, and a big shift I've had is the level of empathy and sympathy I need to have with young people, whatever I think it is, it needs to be more. I want to be, I believe in boundaries. I believe in holding a firm line, but I realize that I need to do this with, I don't want to say a gentle touch, but with the idea that they're still kids and they still are looking at me as someone that's definitely not their peer, that they might be a little bit scared of. And I need to constantly be reminding myself of that. Whereas I think maybe 5 years ago, 10 years ago, maybe I don't want to say I was harder on kids, but I maybe didn't think about it as much as that they still have a lot of growing to do. And I need to use those opportunities to make sure that they feel comfortable, confident, and supported in the things that are going on in their life. And I think that's been a big shift for where I'm at. That, and I need to incorporate more AI into everything that I'm doing in life.
Not going anywhere, coach. You
No,
better
it's
figure out
not.
how to adopt it.
It's not.
All right, let me wrap with this. What would you say is the best thing you do in your program that, say, you were to go back to coaching soccer or Little League baseball or whatever, right? That you're going to bring this with you because of the transformational effect it has on the culture you're trying to create.
Yeah, I was actually talking about it in class today because we were talking about golf in general. And one of the baseball players was like, "What's your guys like hype up song? Or what do you guys do to get fired up?" And I realized that that's not, and this is what I've learned and what I would bring to just about any other sport is I don't want kids hyped up. I don't want them bouncing off the walls and banging into each other. I want kids to walk out, golfers especially, but when we walk out of the van, we are feeling confident in our preparation. We are feeling that we don't need a big high. and we don't need a big low. Our emotional state needs to be steady, because if we all amp each other up and get fired up, that changes from what it is how we've been preparing. So I want the actual competition that we're going into, I want our state of mind to be consistent and steady from how it's been for how we've been preparing for. And I saw it a little bit today. We played well today, but it was close. Like we didn't play our best. And I think there was a little bit of a cavalier attitude maybe coming in, where I've also seen moments where we're going into big events and I've seen guys get too amped up and too taken over by the moment and falter in those ways. So I think the steadier presence that I can be, we always have a consistent song that we play into every match. It turns our brain into this like one mindset. Yes, it's Taylor Swift. That's an important thing, right? We're going to play this and we're just like, it is what it is. And this is what we play as we enter the parking lot. It wasn't my choice, but we started this 2 years, I guess 3 years ago now. And I think it creates a level of comfort without getting ourselves all ramped up. It keeps us at our nice, steady emotional state. And I think that's what I've learned the most in terms of getting kids ready and transition into whatever it is they do.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I think part of the reason is, to your point, if you can stay even keeled and just be consistent, right? The highs and lows are going to balance themselves out versus if you do the other thing, then you see what some of our other results look like. So I think that's great. And golf probably speaks to that, because at the end of the day, if what's the tin cup analogy? I'm just going to keep making par, David. Yeah, I'm going to win the tournament. You go try to
You
make
can't even, the funny thing is we won NorCal's and the last year, and we hadn't done that since 1999. So it was this big moment. And we're so like, even after we won, we're hanging out like in the clubhouse up in Berkeley, and we're, yeah, thank you so much, like shaking hands. And we didn't even know like how to get wrapped up and excited until we finally got back in the van. And at that point, I was like, guys, we got to fire this up here. And we got excited then. But I think that even keel mentality is, if it carries over even into the trophy celebration, great. It just means that it's worked from start to finish.
Good. Hey, man, I appreciate you jumping on. Thanks for taking the time. Looking forward to this season and watching the work that you guys have put in.
Thanks, Justin. Really appreciate all that you do. And podcast is great. And you're even better as an AD. So love it all.
Thanks, man.